Now, we've talked about potential real estate development in the southern sector, and we've also talked about security in the southern sector. As an Anglo person from North Dallas, I know that if not fact, then the bias, the belief is that anything south of the river, anything south of I-30 is not safe. You don't want to be there, which, like I said, is probably more perception than truth, but it's a perception. When you talk about real estate development in the south, the southern sector of Dallas, there's a perception that if you go down there, it's not safe, so we don't want to go down there to spend our money. Now, security and real estate development in that regard, specifically in the southern sector, or at least a perception of security, of an increase in security, is very important, it sounds like, to me, for that development to be drawn. Obviously, we have a population. When you talk about the Dark Triangle, 35 to 45 from downtown to 20, there's a significant population there, and you were talking about there's just a stunning lack of real estate development there. Grocery stores, for example. You would think when you're talking about a region that has 20% of the city that you'd not have just one grocery store, but that you'd have a whole slew of grocery stores, that the chains would be competing to come in and do business there, and you tell me that we don't have that environment. So talk to me about the combination of the two ideas that we've discussed of how do we increase that perception of secure environment to go into, to do our business in, both people who live there as well as people from outside of Oak Cliff, for example, going into Oak Cliff, going into South Dallas. Because I know that there are many fine restaurants that I enjoy going to in Oak Cliff. But there needs to be more of an perception, and maybe some of it is just marketing. Maybe it's that we have that secure environment, but we just need to advertise it. But talk to me about the security measures that you have advocated and the real estate development that you want to see happen there, and that could come about as a result of a more secure environment there.
Well, thank you for the question. If you look at, what they call TOD, the transit-oriented development, which, has come about because of, the Transit Authority DOT, line. The first line that DOT built was where? Lancaster. It was the Lancaster line, which was the first line. Now, go back, I think that line has been in existence for more than 15 years. No TOD, no transit-oriented development has happened because the line ends over there at Lancaster and Loop 12 and heads north. And look at that entire line, no TOD. And it has been...
About TOD, you're meaning the
transit-oriented development, where
these are at the train stations.
Train stations, yeah, right? Commercial development, where you have mixed use, and you have an apartment and townhouses and some other restaurants and something, just taking advantage of the transit. Right. You hop in, you hop out, you go to work, you go. I said for the
Mockingbird station type.
Mockingbird. I mean, again, I'm just saying, you look at the lines.
Right.
Look at what is going on in the lines where they are going, and see what sort of economic development impact it is having in the neighborhood. But I'm saying, for the oldest line in the system, nothing has happened. I mean, of course, there's a discussion to have a project close to a VA hospital, but this is a small project. But for 20 years or so, the line has been existing, nothing has happened. So what is it that we're missing? Again, it's a question that we need to ask ourselves, because it's an obvious situation. So what is missing? Is it because the land is not available, or is it because the people don't think they need that kind of development, or is it because, I don't know what the answer is, but it should be an active discussion, because as the oldest line, you're supposed to have had one of the earliest TODs, but it hasn't happened. You talk about security. Of course, a secured environment is key to any peaceful existence, whether you are doing it in the US or any part of the world. If you look at the world that have been successful, they've had consistent peace. And peace sometimes is those that come about because you have a good law enforcement system. So if we have sections of Dallas where security is an issue, then the question is, how do we deploy our law enforcement to do it? I mean, it is interesting to know that Dallas is one of the major cities in America where these police people are not required to live in the city. So we have policemen and women, and they're finest. They are the best in the country. But they're coming in from the city from 40 miles away. Some of them live in Gainesville, Texas. Some of them live in Greenville, Texas. Some of them live in Waxahachie. So just think for a moment. If we start to have the Dallas police, the first 5 years you're a police officer in Dallas, just have that as a policy. Just like when you finish from the FBI Academy, you have no choice where you are posted. So let's just, for a minute, introduce that concept for our recruit. We have identified these areas where we think security presence. See, sometimes the presence of a police deters a lot of things. And we said, okay, we identified those zip codes. We put it in a bag. We are graduating 40 police officers, and you go and you pick a zip code. And we have a police guest house in those zip code. And that's where you're going to serve your first 1 year or 2 years as a recruit. That's a requirement. We put this ahead of time before you apply. So it's not going to be a case of you live in Denton, you become a police officer, and you come in and you go. No, if you're going to become a Dallas police officer, here are some of the requirements we will like. This is a city of 1.2 million or 3 million people. We can find 40 people within the city limits that want to live here and police here. But again, police work is not going to be effective if we don't police ourselves. There are certain things we need to be mindful of doing that will make our neighborhood look bad. And those are the things, the information I would like to share with this neighborhood. I say, you have a home here, you have a business here. It's your investment. You cannot undermine your own investment by encouraging neighborhood conditions that is negative to your investment. So if you can answer that question yourself, then you're going to be very willing to do something to enhance your neighborhood. If every one of us in Dallas is 1.2 million become police officers, that's not going to happen. But there are certain responsibilities the citizen has to enhance the work of the police, because the police feed off of information. The police also feed off the fact that they have to be respected. If a police car shows up in my neighborhood, pulls up, I look out the window, I'm going to say, okay, what's going on? So those are the things. But just think it for a minute. If 20% of Dallas police officers that live outside the city limits move back into the city limits, we will save money from what it costs them to get to job. In fact, we will save money on the police expenses for some of the sergeants or some of the people that drive our cars outside of the city limits. Just imagine 40 miles to and fro as work, and so in a given day you drive 80 miles to go to work. For a police officer, do the math. If they're driving our car,
that's expense on the...
It's an expense on their budget.
Replacement of the brakes, servicing the vehicle.
It's expense on the budget. It's expense on the... In fact, the public safety, which includes the fire and the police. It's not just the police, firemen and policemen. They are not required. And I mean, whether it's a Texas law or whether it's a whatever law, I think we've come to where we have to start to look at some of the things we have done in the past that necessarily may not have any basis in today's economy. You don't pay Peter you don't want Peter to pay Paul. Okay, so if you have somebody who comes in and does the work, he doesn't spend his tax dollar buying our home in our neighborhood. He hardly spends any of his, sales business in our neighborhood. So what does he do? You are deprived. But they like to earn money from you, but they don't like to spend it with you. So, but if other cities have done it and is working well, I mean, why don't we look at what it would take to encourage them? But we can start with the recruits.
Well, it makes perfect sense. If you have 40 total Dallas police officers who live in the city of Carrollton, they're paying their property tax dollars to another school district. They are spending a significant portion of their sales tax dollars there. We're assuming if they're buying their groceries there, if they're going to restaurants there, if they're buying clothes elsewhere outside of the city of Dallas. Whereas if, as you're saying, if we required that they lived in the city of Dallas, There are nice areas of the city of Dallas that anybody who's making a salary as a police officer and a family like that could live. And then now we're getting the property taxes being generated by their living here and from the commerce that they engage in. So that makes a lot of sense.
Again, you know, I mean, look, the citizens, you know, again, what I'm looking at is being a servant leader. It's not for me to tell the city this is what you do. How do you serve the people? Because the position is that of a service. So the police is a service to the community. So if the community says, this is how we want you to police us, should the police say no to it? If we have a law that said, okay, that means then I can be mayor of Dallas, but I live in Mexico City. Or I can be city council member and I live in Carrollton. If we require district people to live, then why don't we require, or at least have an active discussion that our firemen and our police officers consider living in our city? It is because of the school district. Then we have to find a way to address that issue. The school district is not going to get better if people who have what it takes to make it better are absent in those areas. You know, does some sort of divine intervention come and all of a sudden a neighborhood is clean and is fine? No, it's a human factor. So we encourage them, and if it means we have to subsidize some housing, or if it means to have houses we call guest houses, they can still keep their home in Gainesville or whatever else they do, but we will require them to have a guest house. We will have guest houses in these zip codes where it's a challenge. Finished well, done well, but our cars will be parked there, and they can go there and live, and then their kids can be going to school somewhere else. And when, you know, it's going to take a lot of, you know, policy refinement and discussion to do. But I think it'd be one thing that we'd like to see, and I think it's a lot of things that the citizens of Dallas would like to see happen, because other cities have done it and they're happy with the outcome. So why don't we just have that dialogue and see what does it take? What does it take to have it done?